friends, it's Christy, and I'm thrilled to be back guest designing with my favorite things. One of the most frequent topics I get asked about on my YouTube channel is how I mix and match pattern papers, so I thought I would do a video on that for you guys today. I'll be making a card using the adorable Hoppy Friends stamp set and 3 6x6 pads, the Plaid patterns, Calm and Cozy chevrons, and the Sweet Celebration. I'm going to begin by coloring my images, and I'm using Copic markers, so I stamped my images with MFT's Black Licorice Hybrid ink on some Copic friendly cardstock. And I'm going to be using the E40, E41, E43, and E44 for both of my bunnies. Since I don't yet quite know what kind of patterns I'm going to do on their fur, I want them both to look different and unique, I'm starting with a base layer of that E41, which is the darker of my 2 lighter shades. And I'm just laying in a little bit of a shadow, and then I'm blending that out with the E40. And I'm just blending that out into white. I don't want to cover their entire bodies. I want it to be really soft. And now that that paper is nice and saturated and ready for blending, I'm going to come in with my E44, the darkest shade, and I'm going to block out some different shapes on his body. So I'm giving this little guy some brown ears. I'm also going to give him a patch down his back and a couple of little spots on the right side of his body, on his 2 legs there. And then I'm going to blend out those spots with the E43. Because that paper is already wet from the first layer, the edge of that is not going to be really harsh. It's going to be a little bit of a softer line, but I'm also going to come in with a little bit of that E41 that we used earlier and just soften that even further and make it really be a cohesive part of his fur. It looks a lot more natural. I'll also give a little bit of E41 to his tail. I decided I wanted his face to be brown as well, although I wanted to keep his eyes and the lower part of his face white. So I came in with that E41 and drew that shape in once again, and then once I had that I could darken it up with the E43 and the E44. It's a lot easier to start with your lightest color if you're unsure. It's a lot easier to remove it with the colorless blender. But then once you're satisfied and happy with the results, you can go ahead and build that color up so that it matches the rest of the image. And then I'll just take that E40 right around the edge of that and soften that into the white area. And I'll add a little color to the inside of their ears with the E41. For the second bunny, I'm coming in with that E44 and I'm giving him 1 brown ear, and then I'm giving him kind of a stripe of that darker color down his whole body, all the way from the top of his head to his tail. So I'll blend that out with the E43, and I'll also give him a couple of spots on his hindquarters and then 1 right around his eye. I'll blend out the edge of that E43 with the E41, just softening that up and making the transition nice and smooth. I'll add YR000 to the inside of their ears, which is a nice natural peachy shade, and then I'll give them some rosy cheeks, which is not natural at all, but definitely cute. For the flowers that the bunny is holding, I'm going to dot some YG07 into all the leaves. They're super tiny, so just a touch of your marker will do it. And then I'll use RV14 for all the little flower buds and just color those exactly the same way. So when I make my pattern paper selection, the first thing that I choose is what I call my base pattern, which is going to be the most colorful and have the largest print to it. So for today it's going to be this beautiful plaid that has the really pretty pinks and oranges in it and a few other colors throughout. Next I'm going to choose a monochromatic pattern that's going to go well with it. You can see that several of these choices would work. So I'm thinking about this orange, but I'm going to flip through the rest of the pad just to make sure, and I decide I do like this orange. It brings out the orange stripes in the plaid, and it also goes very well with the brown tones that we use for the bunny. For the focal panel, I've trimmed out some snow cone cardstock with the elegant rectangle stacks, but I want to use some pattern paper for my grass. So since I'm using a large plaid print and a very small polka dot print, I could also use a medium-sized print as long as it goes well with the other two patterns. The plaid that I chose for my background has smaller stripes of lime green and pale blue, so I know these colors are going to work together and in fact even complement each other. I die cut that green chevron with the elegant rectangle stacks and with the grassy hills. So now I can glue that down with some liquid glue to the focal panel that's going to be my sky. And I like to use liquid glue for things like this because you have a little bit of wiggle room to be able to line things up perfectly before it dries permanent. Next I'm going to add my little bunny that goes on the right hand side. And I'm going to just set her down gently. I don't want to push her down too firmly until I get the spacing just right. So I'll add this little guy on the left and then I can adjust as needed. Next I'm going to add some clouds that I die cut using the coordinating dies to the Owl My Love stamp set that was just released. I really love the shape of these clouds, but I liked having them without the lined images, so I just used the dies. I'll add one of the large ones behind the ears of the bunny on the left, and then the other one I'm going to put way up top on the right hand side, and I'll overlap the smaller cloud on top of that. For my card base, I'm using a piece of Peach Bellini cardstock scored and folded to a standard A2 size card, so it is 4 1/4 tall by 5 1/2 wide. I've trimmed down my plaid paper using the A2 Stitch Rectangle STAX Set 2. So this one leaves a little bit of a border right around the outside edge so that the cardstock shows through. And I've trimmed down my orange polka dot to 2 1/2 inches tall by 5 inches wide. And I'm going to center that on the card using the plaid lines as kind of a grid to get it straight. I've added some foam tape to the back of my focal panel, but I've not peeled off the release paper so that I can just set that into place and see where I want my sentiment to go. I'm using the scripty friend sentiment from the Friend Duo, but I decided that I didn't like how the white sentiment stood out. I wanted to have a little bit of a drop shadow, and I decided to use an extra piece of pattern paper for that. So I die cut it out of this pink stripe that also matches our plaid background. I'm dotting some liquid glue on the back of the white sentiment, and then I'm going to layer that right over top really carefully and just shift it just a little bit to the left so it has that pink poking through on the side. I wanted to do a two-part sentiment, so I'm using the Anything But Basic Friendship stamp set, and I'm going to white heat emboss that onto a strip of black cardstock. So I'm using some Versamark ink to stamp that out. I'll cover that in some white heat embossing powder, making sure to coat that really well so it catches all the little parts of that sentiment, and then I'll just tap off any excess from the back and heat set that with my heat tool. While I have my MISTI out, I'm going to stamp the inside of my card. I have some coordinating ink and I'm using that to stamp the little chick and the sentiment that says "You're my kind of chick." And I'm going to stamp that out twice to get a really good impression. So my whole card will read, "Friend, you're all kinds of amazing, you're my kind of chick." Now I'm ready to do the final assembly, so I'm going to peel off those release papers and center my focal panel on the card. I'm going to put it up a little bit high because I want room for the sentiment strip, and I just die cut that out with one of the Blueprints 29 dies. I put foam tape down at the very bottom, and then I'm going to put a little liquid glue at the top where it's going to overlap that focal panel. Then I'm going to take that Friend die cut and add some liquid glue to the back of that, and I'll line that up on my card. You can see that when I die cut that black sentiment strip, I shifted that sentiment over to the right so that I would have room for the bottom of that F to come down into that space. I'll add a dab of glue over the eye and then add the little dot on top as well. To finish off the card, I added a few sparkling clear sequins and then filled in their centers with some crystal stickles for some added sparkle and shine. And that's going to complete our card for today. I'll give you another peek at the inside. I hope you guys enjoyed the tips on using and combining pattern papers and that you feel a little bit more confident in approaching your projects with pattern paper as well. Feel free to leave me a comment down below. I love to read your feedback. Subscribe to My Favorite Things for more inspiring videos just like these here on screen. Have a great day. Bye-bye.